My name is Jack, and my story begins with a dream. For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to travel the world. But there was one problem. I didn't know how to speak English well. Growing up in a small town, my only interactions with English were limited to textbooks and the occasional TV show. But something inside me told me that if I could master the language, I could reach my goal of traveling and connecting with people from different cultures. At first, learning English seemed like a huge mountain to climb. The grammar, the pronunciation, the vocabulary, everything felt overwhelming. I doubted whether I could ever speak the language fluently. But then I remember my dream and how much I wanted to see the world. If I wanted to explore new places, meet new people, and experience life in a way I'd never imagined, English was the key. So I made a decision that changed everything. I would learn English, no matter how difficult it seemed. It wasn't an easy journey. Some days I felt like giving up, but the thought of my dream kept me going. Slowly but surely, I started making progress. I read books in English, watched movies with subtitles, and practiced speaking with anyone who would listen. And with every new word I learned, I felt one step closer to my dream. But the road ahead was still long. There were moments when I felt stuck, when I struggled to put sentences together. But I refused to stop. Every time I felt discouraged, I remembered why I was doing this in the first place. The dream was always bigger than the struggle. And so I kept going. I knew that the journey would be long, but the reward would be worth it. Chapter 2, The First Steps. My first big breakthrough came when I decided to leave my comfort zone. I had been learning English for a while, but I was still hesitant to speak in front of others. That's when I found a language exchange group in my city. They met every week, and participants would practice speaking English with native speakers. I was nervous at first, but I knew that this was an opportunity one couldn't miss. I remember walking into the room for the first time, my heart pounding in my chest. There were so many people, and most of them spoke English so fluently. I felt like a small fish in a big ocean. But instead of turning around and walking out, I introduced myself. The people were kind and patient, and they helped me through my first conversations. I stammered. I made mistakes, but they didn't care. What mattered was that I was trying. Over the next few months, I kept attending those meetings. At first, I was nervous every single time, but little by little, I began to feel more comfortable. I started talking more, making friends, and even participating in discussions. I no longer felt like an outsider. I felt like I was part of something bigger. One night, as I was walking home from a meeting, I realized something important. The fear I had been carrying wasn't as big as I had made out to be. Yes, I made mistakes, but I was still moving forward. And with every conversation, I was one step closer to my dream. Chapter 3, The Challenge. One day, I received an email that would change my life forever. It was an invitation to study abroad in an English-speaking country for 6 months. The opportunity was everything I had ever dreamed of, But there was a catch. I had to be fluent in English to participate. I was terrified. My English wasn't perfect. Sure, I had come a long way, but I wasn't ready to speak like a native speaker. However, the thought of living abroad, experiencing a new culture, and immersing myself in English every day made me realize something. If I didn't go now, I would regret it forever. So I took the challenge head on. I knew I had limited time to improve, but I wasn't about to let fear stop me. I set myself a strict schedule. Every day, I woke up at 5 a.m. to study for 2 hours before work. I listened to English podcasts during my lunch breaks and watched movies in English every night. I also began speaking to strangers online. I found people who were willing to chat with me in English, and it helped me gain more confidence. I started to see improvements in my pronunciation and grammar. The more I practiced, the more I realized how much potential I had to improve. There were days when I felt overwhelmed by how much I still had to learn, but I reminded myself of the opportunity ahead. I had a goal now, and that was all that mattered. Chapter 4, The Leap of Faith. The day finally arrived. I boarded a plane to the United Kingdom, filled with excitement and fear. I had never been away from home for so long, and I had never been so far from my comfort zone. But I knew this was the moment I had been working for. The first few days were challenging. I had to adjust to a new culture, meet new people, and navigate everything in English. I remember getting lost in the city on my second day. I didn't know how to ask for directions or understand the local accent. For a moment, I felt completely out of place. But then I reminded myself that this was part of the process. I started meeting new people at my university. They were from all over the world, and English was the common language we used to communicate. It felt surreal at first to be surrounded by so many different cultures, but the more I spoke, the more I realized that my English had improved. I wasn't perfect, but I could communicate effectively. I also made an effort to explore the city. Every weekend, I visited new places, spoke to locals, and practiced as much as I could. Little by little, I started to feel at home. As the months passed, I noticed a huge difference in my confidence and my language skills. I was no longer the nervous person I had been before. I could now speak English comfortably, understand native speakers, and express my thoughts without hesitation. Chapter 5, A Dream Realized. 6 months passed, and my adventure was coming to an end. I had accomplished everything I had set out to do, and more. I had traveled to new places, made lifelong friends, and most importantly, I had mastered a language that once seemed impossible. The day I boarded the plane back home, I realized something. This journey wasn't just about learning English. It was about pushing myself to become the person I always dreamed of being. The lessons I learned weren't just about grammar or vocabulary. They were about resilience, determination, and the power of never giving up on your dreams. As I sat on the plane, I thought about my future. I no longer felt limited by language. I knew that no matter where I went in life, I had the tools to connect with people, understand different cultures, and achieve whatever I set my mind to. My adventure had changed me, and I was ready for the next chapter of my life. Final thoughts. If you ever feel like your dream is too far out of reach, remember this. The path may be difficult, but every step you take brings you closer to your goal. Keep pushing, keep learning, and never give up. Your adventure is waiting for you.